Sittig. I'm the communications coordinator over here at the Consortium. So welcome today. This webinar is part of our free capacity building series. Hopefully you're familiar with that series. There's a link in front of you if you'd like more information on that. There is also a link over in the helpful web links window, which is in the right lower corner of your screen. If you want to look at other sessions that we've had, keep an eye out for upcoming sessions. You can also watch recordings from sessions from both this series and also past years. These webinars are free to anybody who wants to build their skills in typically cancer control, public health topics, and today we're talking a little bit about communication. Who is able to practice using the chat tool, and if you would enter into the chat tool what topic or cause or organization that you have in mind today as we think about preparing an elevator speech. So what are you hoping to whip up a great elevator speech for this morning? Or yes, afternoon already. So Rachel and I are on board with the consortium. For the consortium today, Christine, Breast Cancer Deadline 2020. Ashley, Safe Routes to School, awesome. And I think I saw Phyllis typing something there, so we'll watch and see what she is going to be talking about today, hopefully. Thanks, guys. So again, let us know if you have questions or any technical difficulties. I do also want to let you know that today's webinar is being recorded, and it will be available at canceriowa.org. We'll send you all a link after that, or after we're done and when the recording is available. So if you want to review anything or access any of the web links that we're providing today, you can do that as well. All right. So, oh great, Phyllis, colorectal cancer fit testing, great. Rob, this is probably really interesting for somebody coming from the arts world to talk about colorectal cancer screening and safe routes to school and breast cancer. So this will be fun to see how we can all mix our ideas today.
Absolutely.
All right, so let me introduce Rob. He is the Director of Marketing and Communications for the University of Iowa's Hancher. He is also a freelance art and entertainment writer and the author of the comic mystery novel Murder by the Slice. Thanks for joining us, Rob.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I'm delighted to speak with all of you today. I've been telling Kelly that the whole webinar thing is a little bit new to me. I've been a participant, but never a speaker on one. Well, Kelly and Rachel have both seen me give a presentation. They know that I wander aimlessly about the room and that I talk with my hands and that I count on people to laugh at my jokes. And so I'm So shall I just jump in, Kelly?
Yes, go for it.
All right. So I think I have some control here. There we go. All right, so here's what we're going to try to do today. We're going to talk about the need for elevator speeches and how they can be useful to your organization, to you as an individual, and also sort of broadly across your organization as a way to help people in your community understand the work that you do and why it's important and why they might want to be involved in it. So the main things we're going to try to do today, we're going to identify the key components of an elevator speech. We're going to work on creating an actual speech that captures the importance and personal impact of a cause or an organization. And then Kelly's going to help us about midway through here to identify some key points that could be used in an elevator speech if you were talking about the consortium itself.
Rob, this is Kelly. If I could jump in, we've had our first question for you, and it's from Rachel. And she wants to know, first question for Rob, are you over 50 and have you been screened for colorectal cancer?
Well, I do appreciate the concern for my health, but I'm not. No and no. I am under 50 and have not been screened. However, I am well aware that I'm in a risk group because of my family history, and so I may need to be getting that
about your risk factors.
Fair enough. Fair enough. All right. So there I am. See, just a young guy. So this highlights all of the things that Kelly said about me. Now, you might think that it's just because I'm self-promotional that I reference Murder by the Slice, and that is certainly true. Although the other reason that I mentioned this little self-published mystery novel of mine is because it only exists because of a connection to cancer. My dear friend, Lennox Randon, called me up one day and said, your wife tells me that you have a book you started 10 odd years ago and that it's sitting in a drawer, and I'm working on a book, and we should get together every week, and we should each work on our books and help each other get those books done. And I said what any, aspiring novelist who had no idea what the plot of his book might be would say. I said, no, that's a really sweet idea, Randon, but I'm never going to finish that book. And then Randon reminded me something really important, and that is that he has terminal stomach cancer, and that finishing this book that he was working on was really important to him. And so since that time, there are now three of us, my friend Randon, myself, and a fellow by the name of Dennis Green, who meet almost every week and work on our little novels together. We're each working on a second book now, if you can believe that. And so I feel a personal connection to the conversation that we're having today and to the work that you all do to make healthier communities, to help people with cancer lead productive lives and to get the treatment that they need and all of those sorts of things. Friends, dogs, bullets, lovers, by my good friend Randon. So, with that, we'll take my mug off the screen here. All right. Now, because I work for a major research university, a top public university in the United States, I thought it was important that I cite a really good source here on my slide, and so of course I went to Wikipedia, which is where you get so much good information, just to make sure we all understand what we're talking about here, and also to help you the next time you're in sort of a barroom trivia situation. So an elevator pitch or speech or statement is a short summary used to quickly and simply define a profession, a product, a service, an organization, or an event, and its value proposition. What is it about the organization or the event that makes it valuable? In the second paragraph here, you see that the term is credited to two folks there, Eileen, where you have stepped into an elevator and you suddenly meet someone who would like to know more about your organization. And it imagines that you have the length of the elevator ride to communicate those key points in the hope that the person you're speaking with will want to learn more or will want to get involved. Now, I've always thought in some ways it's a lousy framework for most of us here in Iowa because we just don't have that many elevators that go that high. But you can imagine that we're talking about somewhere between 30 seconds and a couple of minutes to talk about what it is about your organization that makes it important in your community. I did just elevator pitch my book to you. Yes, Kelly, that is exactly what I did. Okay, here we go. All right. Now, there's some easy confusion as to what might need to be in your elevator speech. Some people think that an elevator speech is synonymous with your mission statement. Designed, well, certainly ours is designed to help funders understand who we are. It's really a statement as much for grant writing as it is for anything else. So this is on your screen there is Hancher's mission statement. Hancher supports the University of Iowa's mission of teaching, research, and service by presenting the world's finest performing artists, developing, engaging, and enlightening audiences, initiating and supporting the creation of new works, and providing artistic, educational, technical, human, and physical resources to the university and the people of Iowa. Now, all of that is true. All of that is important. But if I encountered you on an elevator and recited that to you, you would be doing everything you possibly could to get off of the elevator as quickly as you could. Again, I'm not suggesting you shouldn't have a robust mission statement. I'm just suggesting that it does not double as your elevator speech. Now, some of you may be thinking, well, maybe not my mission statement, but what about my vision statement? So here's Hancher's much punchier vision statement. Hancher strives to enrich the life of every Iowan through transformative artistic experiences. Now, we love this vision statement. We put it on all of our materials. We can, in fact, recite it at the drop of a hat if folks are interested in such things. But it, too, isn't really your elevator speech in this case because there isn't enough to it, but also because it's a little jargony, right? What exactly is a transformative artistic experience anyway? What does it mean to enrich someone's life? What do we mean by those things? And so while a vision statement is intended to be aspirational, it's intended to help you think in big ways about someone else, why your work is important. So there are lots of ways to think of the components of an elevator speech. You'll see there's a link here, and it is also over in the helpful web links. You see Chris O'Leary's name there under Elevator Pitch 101. Chris O'Leary's web article breaks down the components of an elevator speech in terms of these 9 words that start with C, none of which turn out to be cookie. But as we talked about, the first one is that it's concise. You can't ramble on and on. The second is that it is clear, that you've found a way to describe your work that is easily digested in that brief amount of time. That it's compelling, that your listener has a reason to keep listening. That it's credible, that you establish that you know whereof you speak, right? And I think for all of you in your organizations, that is something that comes very naturally. Your credibility. We like to think here at Hancher that when it comes to issues of arts and culture in this community, that we are one of the most credible organizations because of our history of doing this work for more than 40 years, presenting world-class artists throughout down in the details of your work, but that is also concrete enough that your listener can quickly suss out what it is you actually do, that it isn't just some pie in the sky, well, that it isn't just the highfalutin language of your vision statement. Mr. O'Leary could be Ms. O'Leary now that I think of it. Chris suggests that you want to try to customize your elevator speech to your anticipated audience, and I think that it's a good idea when you can to have several speeches, if we were all tap dancers, we would call them pocket steps. A pocket step is something that you can break out when you're improvising. You're tap dancing away and you're improvising, and you need to transition from one section of your improvisation to another. You might use what's called a pocket step, something you know you can do on a moment's notice to get you where you're going. I think of elevator speeches in much the same way, that you want to have several in your pocket that you can pull out when the moment is right. Issues of consistency, you want to make sure that you're on message when it comes to talking about what's important about your organization, that you are in keeping with the mission of your organization, that everyone in your organization understands what the shared talking points are. And then finally, that it's conversational, that it doesn't sound like a lecture, that it doesn't sound, even though I just talked about the need to have several available, that it doesn't sound overly rehearsed, that it can be responsive to questions and all of those sorts of things, that you aren't so married to whatever script you've developed that if someone asks you a question, you have no idea what to do then. And I think that, again, there are lots of different ways to think about the pieces of an elevator speech, but I think that Chris here, that these 9 are particularly helpful, and that the mnemonic device is helpful as well. But for me, when I think about elevator speeches, the most important thing doesn't start with C at all, it starts with P, and that is that you find a way to make your elevator speech personal. Because how do you convince someone that your organization should be important to them? You convince them by explaining why it's important to you, right? So interested in connecting great artists with great audiences, artists from around the world with audiences from around our community, to experience not only world-class art, but art outside their normal comfort zone, help people experience new things. And we do that by casting a wide net and bringing artists from all around the world in all sorts of different disciplines, bringing them to a shared space where the community can get together and have a shared experience. We think that work is important, and we would love for you to support it either by joining us in the audience as a ticket holder or by donating to the organization to support the work that we do. But it's also a very dry elevator speech, right? I hit all of our key talking points. Great artists, great audiences, multidisciplinary. We need the audiences to make our work go, right? But when I think about what really helps people get into your organization and understand your organization, it has to do with what makes your organization the place where you want to work, right? What is it that you are passionate about every day when you go into your organization? It's a really good exercise, actually, as a side note. If you're having trouble remembering why it's really important, writing your elevator speech is a really good exercise to help you get past the sort of day-to-day things that we all experience in our jobs, where you get home at the end of the day and you think, oh my goodness, I don't even know what I accomplished today or why I did any of it, or that meeting was so frustrating, or I listened to the dullest guy on a webinar today. The thing about producing your elevator speech is it can help you personally connect back to why it is you're doing the work that you're doing. I call the Jenny story. So when I was a student employee at Hancher back in the early 1990s, I was an usher, and being an usher is the best job because you get to see all of the shows that you work. And one of the things that did for me is that it expanded my understanding of what the aesthetic possibilities, what the artistic possibilities really are in the world. I saw work I'd never seen before and styles of work that I'd never seen before. Now, I liked everything we did at Hancher except for the dance. I didn't understand the dance at all. And this was a little bit problematic because dance is really Hancher's specialty. It's what we're known for both nationally and internationally as a commissioner of new work, as a place that really supports the creation of dance. And so, but I didn't connect to it at all. What I did connect to, however, was a young woman on our staff who looked really cute in the blue blazers that we all wore and who was a dance major. And she was way out of my league, so far out of my league that we weren't playing the same sport. and attend the shows and talk to other dance majors and do all of these things to try to learn more about an art form. Now that effort has paid double dividends in my life. First, right after jazz, I'm kind of a jazz guy, right after jazz, dance is my favorite thing that we present. The second benefit, I'm married to the girl. And I have been for 20 years now. And experiencing dance together is one of the most important things in our relationship, not just as a couple, but also in our wider circle of friends and in our community. Now, I tell that story all the time. It's a winner for a lot of reasons, right? I usually get, a little, aw, those sorts of things, very gratifying, makes me feel like a good husband, all of those sorts of things. But it also contains all of the elements of the other speech. It tells you the kind of work that we do. It tells you that we believe it changes lives. It tells you that it's I tell that story at every opportunity because I believe that it does a good job of explaining why the work is important to me and why it could be important to you. Now, the second example that I'll give is, I call this one, the Brian story. Brian is my son, who is, he's almost 18 now, but this story dates back to when he was about 6. So everyone, or most people, many people, particularly in Iowa City and throughout what we call the creative corridor, are familiar with the sort of work that Hancher does at 7:30 at night. We put something big and shiny up on the stage. We invite people into the audience to experience it. What people may not be as familiar with is the educational work that we do, the ways that we try to take artists out into the community to connect with a wide cross-section of people. I remember bringing the Marcus Roberts Trio to town. Now, the Marcus Roberts Trio is Marcus Roberts on piano. He's a brilliant pianist. He happens to be blind, one of the leading pianists in the music today. Roland Garand on bass, and then Jason Marsalis, that's Winton and Branford's jazz is relevant to their lives. Now, in our current pop culture landscape, there isn't a lot of jazz. And so you have to first and foremost connect with the kids in a way that makes sense to them. And the way that Marcus would do this, and I remember so vividly having my son there with me as he was doing this, Marcus would talk to them about improvisation. And he would remind them that those moments in a jazz song where an artist performs off the top of his or her head, that's about your personal expression. That's about what's important to you and what you're feeling at that very moment. And so Marcus would play a little bit, and then he'd let the kids sort of sing out at the top of their lungs, whatever came to mind. And what they learned that day, what my son learned that day, is that jazz isn't just an esoteric intellectual music. It's a music filled with joy. It's a music that is filled with personality, and that some of that personality can be what you yourself bring to the table. So we believe that our educational work is essential to our overall work, and we are so grateful to the folks who support it and help us make it possible. All right, so those are my squishy stories about my family, right? The sort of stories that, as I think about my son going off to college, still choke me up a little bit, right? But that's actually because those are the sorts of stories that help other people understand why it's important and why it might be important to them. All right. Kelly, I've been talking a lot. Do you want to talk about the ICC for a minute?
Yes, but I'm afraid my information is not very squishy. So just in case, I know a lot of you guys on here, we talked a little bit in the chat tool earlier about what you have in mind for what you want to create an elevator speech for, whether that is your organization or a cause you're really passionate about. And since this is an Iowa Cancer Consortium webinar, we hope you'll also consider at some point what your elevator speech would be about the consortium, especially because I know most of the folks on the phone and the webinar are members of the consortium, and it can be a really tough organization to explain. So what I'm going to give you here in like 30 seconds is just a little bit of information that you could work into your speech. So this is not the personal stuff that Rob has been talking about that's so important. This is just a little bit of extra information that might help you pad your speech with the consortium, again, because it's such a tricky thing to explain and talk about. So as I'm talking about this, keep in mind how you would work this into something that actually has a personal twist to it as well. So I think the key thing about the consortium with us, because I know we consider it that way as well. One thing that makes it a win-win for everybody is that we're neutral, which is a very boring and cold word, but it plays an important role in what we do. We have a lot of members and partners and organizations that we work with who might be considered competitors out in the world, who might be competing for a patient base, for clients, for funding. And the consortium is that happy, neutral place that where they can come together and combine their resources and do a lot of good in a place that doesn't have to be competitive. And I think that makes us a little bit unique. So something to keep in mind when you're talking about the consortium. We being the consortium, we are the only ones really who do exactly what we do in Iowa, which makes us very unique. Again, most organizations have what they might think of as competitors, counterparts, and we definitely have very close partners who do similar things, but when it comes to building that cancer control coalition partnership, the consortium is really the only organization that does that in the same way it does throughout. And lastly, I hope all of our partners think that we make them stronger, whether it's through our capacity building series, our cancer control conferences and meetings. We have free and reduced cost resources and materials. We offer grant funding. So our function is to make our partners and the people who work with us stronger and more effective. So obviously I mentioned that that doesn't have a lot of the personal twist, but if you want some specific information about programs and partnerships and how they have affected specific people, you can check out a couple of the links that I have over to the right. The 2014 Iowa Cancer Consortium highlights has some stories about projects that happened in 2014 and how they affected Iowans specifically, so you can check that out. And then also we have a little one-pager about the consortium if you need any extra information. But again, all of that would need to go together with your personal experiences and information about the consortium. I know, but important. Rob, I think it's back to you.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you. All right, let's see. So now it's your turn. Those of you who, well, everyone who's listening, it'd be great if you would participate in this activity. And then when we're done here in 3 or 4 minutes, if we have some volunteers who'd like to give their elevator speech, we'd love to hear them and respond to them. But let's take 3 or 4 minutes right now to just write down the barest draft, the first things that come to mind as you think about how you might shape your own elevator speech or your own elevator pitch. I chose this cartoon because I'm a huge baseball fan, and catchers and pitchers have finally reported, which means it's almost spring. So what we're going to do now, as I mourn for the month I have to wait for real baseball, we're going to give you 3, maybe 4 minutes to write your own elevator speech, and then we'll see if we have any volunteers to share them.
But also, if it's all right with you, we can leave or ask people to unmute their lines if they have a question and just hop in
Absolutely. Either
over
way.
the phone. So as a reminder, if you muted your phone earlier, this way you can unmute it by typing *# on your phone. So feel free to chime in with questions during this little period for Rob, or type them in the chat box and we'll make sure they get asked.
Okay, I'll hop back in here as we are about 15 minutes from the end of our time together. Now, before I ask any of you to jump in and share your drafts with us, I am always reminded of what the great Jerry Seinfeld says in a situation like this. He reminds us that the number one fear in America is public speaking, and that the number two fear in America is death, which means that at the average funeral, most people would prefer to be in the coffin rather than giving the eulogy. And so I'm sensitive to folks' concerns about public speaking in general, and perhaps in the odd setting that is a webinar. But if there are brave souls out there, we would love to hear a speech or two.
We'll ask people to volunteer through the chat tool.
It's a good idea.
Right, Rachel over here at the consortium says she's ready to go if no one else is.
Okay, I'm feeling the colorectal cancer love here because I have Ann and Phyllis on the phone who I think are both working colorectal cancer. So instead of doing one about the consortium, I kind of decided to do it like why you should get screened for colorectal cancer.
I think that's great.
Okay, so maybe I'll convince you here, Rob.
Fair enough.
Okay, so here it is. A colonoscopy, I get it, isn't really a day in the park, but I lost 2 grandparents to colorectal cancer because they weren't screened in time. So what is a colonoscopy worth? It's a few hours of prep that doesn't taste that good, and a few trips to the bathroom, and an hour-long procedure. But to me, it's worth seeing your first granddaughter graduate college, enjoying your retirement from John Deere, listening to high school sports and feeling the summer sun, and holding your first grandbaby boy. So if you still aren't convinced that a colonoscopy isn't that bad, there are other options besides a colonoscopy that you can do to detect your colorectal cancer. A simple at-home test can be taken annually to go ahead and find that and see if you need to have a colonoscopy. So this March, my challenge to you is to either get a colonoscopy or talk to your doctor about an at-home test because it can save your life and increase the years that you enjoy.
I think that's really nicely done for 2 reasons. One, I think that your personal piece, this idea that people miss things, that there is so much of life to be lived that you want to do everything you can to make sure you have the best possible chance to be there for all these important life moments. Heaven knows, I'm surely thinking about those things as my son approaches his high school graduation. Part of any elevator pitch that's around something that people aren't too sure about, and that is just acknowledge up front that a colonoscopy sounds like no fun at all, right? There's no sense in trying to bury that in the speech or try to hide that or any of those sorts of things. I always feel really blessed, right? As an arts professional, I'm asking you to come sit in the dark with me and watch a show, generally speaking, which isn't too scary for most people in the way that a colonoscopy might be. But I think you did a really smart thing by acknowledging that up front, and then by hitting us with those personal things that make it seem like, you know what, I could maybe live through that if what it meant was living through all these wonderful things in the future. Nice job.
Thanks.
Awesome, Rachel. Thank you. And Christine says she's ready as well, Rob.
Excellent. Christine, fire away.
Okay, I have a rough draft. Um, okay. I believe every child deserves a mother. I was diagnosed with breast cancer and aggressive breast cancer when our daughter Gail was 14. My greatest fear was that I would die and she wouldn't have a mother. The National Breast Cancer Coalition and Breast Cancer Deadline 2020 has one goal: to end breast cancer. Breast Cancer Deadline 2020 has 2 elements: primary prevention, think vaccine, so no one gets breast cancer in the first place, and second, to prevent metastasis or the spread of cancer, which kills us. Breast Cancer Deadline 2020 will save lives.
I really like that. I love that personal piece at the top, especially when it's your own story, right? What could be more powerful than that? What could make a better case for the kind of work that you're doing and the kind of work that's important to you? You also managed to do something that is not easy, and that is share a couple of key facts briefly and in an interesting way. I think that, with all the publicity that breast cancer awareness gets, and all the pink ribbons, and the Washington Warrior marching band showing up for a performance all in pink, I still think that we don't really know that people are working on a vaccine, right? That's a big headline moment, and you worked it in there perfectly. And I think that it really helps people realize that we're not just trying to fight hope, not just desperation. I think that's really nicely done.
Okay, I'm willing to have criticism too.
No,
Make it even better.
I think that you could. You might want to wrap back around to your story at the end.
Okay.
I always think that that's sort of a not just in this situation, but sort of a powerful storytelling device is always to make the end and the beginning sort of rhyme with each other one way or another.
Okay.
And in this particular case, what that does is it makes sure that your listener remembers that you're not just talking about this because you get paid to talk about it, but because it's really important to you personally.
Okay. So how about something about um, so I continue to work on it so that my now 35-year-old daughter um, will live to be a mother for my 2 grandchildren.
Oh, I think that's perfect. I think that having the opportunity to talk about paying it forward in that way, that that the idea that your daughter also needs to be screened and to keep an eye on all of these sorts of things, I think that you have exactly the right story to tell about why the work's important.
Great. Thanks for the help.
That I see that.
Anything else? Okay, go ahead.
Well, I see that Ashley is typing her speech here. Here is what it says. At Upper Explorerland Regional Planning Commission, we are dedicated to helping our communities build a bright, sustainable future. We care very deeply about the communities we serve because we call these places home too. I think that is such a good reminder, right? It's easy sometimes to forget that one of the reasons we do nonprofit work, right? All of us could be making significantly more money in other fields, perhaps, but we do nonprofit work because we believe in it and because it makes our communities better. I think, Ashley, if you had an example of what it means to build a bright, sustainable future, a specific story about something that you've seen your organization do or help with, that strengthens that even more. But those are exactly the right building blocks to get going. All right, we are running just a little tight on time. Is there anyone else who feels strongly about jumping in?
We're okay to move forward.
All right, then that's what we will do. Okay, so no bench players. Everyone should have an elevator pitch. And I believe this. It's hard to do, right? And it might be easier in some of our organizations like Hancher. There are 15 of us running Hancher, right? And so we all know each other really, really well, and we all meet together all the time, and we're all really committed to the work that we do. And so each and every one of us some educational event that we've seen change the life of a child or an adult, some artist interaction that has been unexpected and delightful. We can all do that, and I think that it is really important to make that kind of thinking part of your organization's culture. It's not just your marketing director's job. It's not just your development director's job. It's not just your executive director's job. It's everybody's job to know why the work's important and to be able to articulate to others why the work is important. And as I sort of indicated before, that's not just good practice from a marketing perspective. It's also good practice from a morale building perspective and a team building perspective because everyone has front of mind awareness of why the organization's work is important. So that's what I have to say on that. And then I have provided a series of links here. They are over in the helpful web links box to the right side of your screen. Now, I'm not necessarily, what am I not doing? I'm not necessarily endorsing any of these particular perspectives. What I've been trying to offer here is a range of thoughts as to what makes an elevator pitch effective. Some of these are from a for-profit perspective. Some of these are from a non-profit perspective. So when you have time, you might read through some of those. I think we might just have time to watch this little video that talks about some other pitches before we sign off.
All right, this is Kelly. I'm going to fire up the video. If you are on the phone, this will actually play through your computer speaker, so you'll need to turn that up for the moment. And you might want to go ahead and mute your phones too while we're doing this.
One of my favorite things to write was the pitch chapter because, I'm a writer and I find myself pitching all the time, and I wanted to learn how to do it better. I identified 6 new pitches for the 21st century. So the Pixar pitch is modeled on the narrative structure of Pixar films, and a story artist for Pixar named Emma Coates essentially revealed the source code of this. Once upon a time, every day, one day, because of that, until finally, blank. Just fill in those blanks, and it ends up being powerful. We don't see the world only as a set of logical propositions. We see it as a set of episodes, and by enlisting the power of story in a pitch, which is something we don't do that much, it ends up being a very, very effective way to get your message across. Either the category of utility, they're very useful to people, or curiosity. They pique people's curiosity. Anything in between, anything that combines the two, doesn't work very well. Obama did this very well in the campaign. He sent out a lot of emails, but the most popular email, the subject line was, "Hey." Whoa. Think about how many times you open an email that doesn't have a subject line. Some people end up opening those first. Wow, because they're curious. One of my favorites is the rhyming pitch. Seems kind of cheesy, if not sleazy, which rhymes. Rhymes end up increasing what's called processing fluency. And when people are able to process something more fluently, they absorb it more, they understand it better. There was a trial of O.J. Simpson, the former football star, who was accused of murdering his wife and her friend. They found a glove on the crime scene. And so the prosecutor said, well, of course it's your glove, try it on, and he can't get the glove on his hand. In the closing statement, the late Johnny Cochran said to the jury, if it doesn't fit, you must acquit. What's remarkable now is that 18 years later, people remember that. If it doesn't fit, you must acquit. Questions are active, statements are somewhat passive. So if I just make an assertion to you, you listen, okay, cool, you're listening. But if I ask you a question, you inevitably have to respond. Are you better off now than you were 4 years ago? And that's more persuasive, that's more likely to move people, because what happens? They think, am I better off? They start thinking about it, and they begin to articulate their own reasons for agreeing with you. So don't you think we should all use more question pitches? Tweeting is a form of pitching, and there's some evidence showing that the most important thing you can do in pitching via Twitter is give people good information. Even if it's self-promotional, people tend to dig it, and also questions. All right, questions via Twitter end up being really effective too. One of them is the one-word pitch. The idea in the world right now is you want ownership of one word. So when people think of you, they think of that word. When people say that word, they think of you. And actually, it turns out that President Obama did a pretty good job of this, because his word in 2012 was forward. All of the ads, all the public events had that word, forward. And so he was able to distill his message into one word. The pitch process, when it works well, is inherently collaborative. In some ways, pitch isn't quite the same word, because pitch implies, I'm going to throw this to you and you're either going to catch it or not. It's much more interactive. We have to think of pitching not as saying, I'm going to sell you on this right now, but essentially, here's an invitation, an intriguing invitation to have a conversation.
To Sell is Human is about how to move people with authenticity, with passion, and with purpose.
One day, I went back, I looked at my sent emails, I looked at my calendar, I looked at the tweets that I had sent. I realized that an enormous portion of my time involved selling. Not only selling books, but just convincing people, persuading people, cajoling people. I had this bizarre realization that I'm a salesman.
The book truly cemented a suspicion that I've had, which is we're living in a world now where we're all salespeople.
Now, there's a notion that a lot of people are is the public good. the thing that we are selling is a better life for people, and that's always worth selling. And so I think that we can take pride in the work that we do, and we can be confident that when we talk about that work in passionate, authentic ways, that we are in fact helping people have the lives that we want them to have, that we all would like to have. And that's, again, why I'm such an admirer of the work that all of you do. Now, we're at the end of our time together. I am available to you if I can be helpful in the future. This is my contact information. That's my phone number here at Hancher on the Road here at Seashore Hall at the University of Iowa as we wait for our new building. That's my email address, and that is my Twitter handle. So if you would like to know all about my son's bowling career and my work as a self-published author and other witty things, you can follow me on Twitter. Thanks so much for your time, everyone. I really appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you, Rob. We really appreciate you stepping out of the arts for a day and talking so much about colonoscopy.